Pounding the Meat podcast. It's another Thursday. We are live. How is everyone tonight? I'm doing fantastic. And I'm excited for tonight's show. We got a lot to go over tonight. It's going to be a good one. We're talking about the man of the hour. The ace of belts. Dave Millican. Master Thief? I don't know. What's up, everyone? What up? King J. Sean, how are you? Wrestling Collectibles Empire, how are you? Denisi, what's going on, brother? Chacon. What's cracking? We'll be cracking tonight, bro. I'm just go through everybody. Justin, how are you? Juan, what's going on? The Gator. Wrestling Bonkers. Panetta. Appreciate that, bro. Chris Thermo, good evening. IVT, what has happened? Are we ready to go? What's up, man? Thank you, Rob. So, we got a lot to get into. Let me bring on my first guest. And I'll get to your comments as much as possible. Oi! I love when he says that. Oi. But let me go through it. Here we go. What up, Damon? Ladies and gentlemen, this man is the OG YouTuber. I don't know if he likes me to call him the OG, but I consider him the OG YouTuber. I've been watching him since I was probably this tall. And congratulations on him hitting 20,000 subscribers. That is an accomplishment. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Hazard F5. Hazard, welcome to Pounding the Meat podcast. How are you?
I'm not too bad. A little bit tired, but I'm not too bad.
What is it, 1 a.m. over there? 1 a.m.?
Just after 1 a.m., yeah.
1 a.m. Thank you for staying up with us, man. I appreciate
All
that.
Good.
I had to have you on for this one. I had to have you on. And of course, it's going to be very interesting. We have clips, we have photos, we have a lot to unravel here. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to the Ace of Belts. The Ace of Belts has been doing quite a bit of touring in the podcast world. I don't remember him being this vocal in the last few weeks as he has been lately.
He was off the grid for several years.
Yeah, and I wonder why.
Hard to imagine. I mean,
very hard.
Take a little mathematician and start a punch to work that one out.
And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I call this man the King of Japan. This man has been busy. I'm surprised he even has the time to chill with us tonight. Let me just show you what he's been busy with. Check these out. I'm sure all of you are familiar with these titles. Little AEW, little New Japan. Some of his work here, absolutely incredible. Little Retromania. My God. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Mr. Dan McMahon is here.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dan. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with us. I know you're busy. You got a lot going on.
Always.
I don't know if you're as busy as Mr. Dave Millican, but you're a busy man nonetheless. So, gentlemen, I reached out to you within the last couple of weeks. I've been wanting to go over this topic for a little bit now. But what really, really made me want to do this with you guys was, like I was telling Hazard, he's been on a little bit of a press tour. Not only that, Dan, but you threw out a tweet, right? And it was a tweet regarding Mr. Dave Millican and the lack of delivering orders.
Right.
What's going on with these orders? What was behind that tweet, Dan? Why that tweet?
Well, you find out that he was able to put together 40 something belts for Chris Jericho's cruise. And he's had, which is the fourth cruise he's had now. And he's done the belts for the VIP people every time. So you figure, 10, 20 belts for the first one, it gathers steam, 20, 30 for the second. I don't have an idea of numbers, but you realize that he's probably made at least 60 belts for Chris Jericho's cruise in the last 4 or 5 years. And it makes you wonder, where are the belts that people ordered in 2010, 2011, 2012? There was a bunch of us. We had like a little mini gathering of the belt group at the NWA Legends Convention in 2013. And there were several people who just gave Dave cash or ordered belts.
Cash?
There were people there who didn't know anything about the real belt community. And they saw us with some of our real belts and they made crazy offers. And I think a few people sold their legitimate belts at the event. And I know for a fact one person took the money, like a person ran across the street, went to the ATM, got the cash, gave the guy a stack of hundreds, bought his belt. Guy went over to Millican and ordered, I think, a crumb rind cast, and he still hasn't had it yet. So this is 10 years. And I know there's people who've been waiting longer than that. And, I've been waiting on various items, but not as long as some of those other people. So I feel like at this point, there hasn't been any communication. There hasn't been anything where he's saying, I'm sorry for what I've done. I got overwhelmed.
Hold on, we lost you, Dan. We lost you. We're gonna see. There you are. You're back. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, the only thing we know is information that is leaked out based on people who have been close to him. Like, we'd rather hear it from the source. And I think a lot of the controversy and a lot of the issues wouldn't have been as blown up if he was very out in front of it, very active, letting everyone know what the status is, what went on, what happened. We shouldn't have to be piecing the story together a decade later based on what various people are saying.
And Hazard, you were saying to me backstage that you're still waiting. How long has it been for you? What did you order? And have you gotten any updates on anything? You there, Hazard? Hello, Hazard? We'll try and get him back.
Yeah, so
oh, there you go.
A friend of mine was ordering from Dave back in. Pardon?
We're in a delay. It seems delayed.
This is one of the really concerning things. So my friend. Oh, that's all right. Are we frozen with Dan?
You're good. You're good now.
You're good?
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to try and take you out and put you back in and see if that works. All right, hold on.
Bring a belt from him back in.
No, it's bad.
Okay.
Yo, Ethan or Joey, can you message him to see if he can refresh the screen? Just refresh the screen or refresh StreamYard. All right. So, Dan, it's funny you were saying that. Hazard, you're good? You back?
I think so.
There you go. Way better. All right. What were you saying? Go ahead.
Mine's it's really weird and it's really concerning. As Dan said, like, communication is the biggest problem. So I had a friend who was ordering a belt in 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. And I decided to get in on that order with him. So we ordered 3 belts between us. Since that time, I'd ordered another belt in 2011 and another belt in 2013. I received the belt I ordered in 2013, but not the one from 2010. So it's the whole, is there a list to work through as far as like who's ordered whose, or is it just like grab whichever plates are ready, paint them, leather them, and put them out? It's the lack of organization that, at least that's how it comes across. because
Right.
I also know that the belt that I did receive, which was the overall Intercontinental, I also know that someone ordered that belt before me, and I got mine first. So again, it goes back to that question of how's the process going and in what order they're doing these things. Because if it's just a case of grab whatever is there nearest to the station and then putting it out, that's got to be concerning for customers. And as Dan said, if he came out and said, "Look, this is the situation, I'm working on it," that kind of thing, it'd be understandable. But there's not been anything. And then when you see him going on Talk as Jericho and stuff, or even tweeting and on social media, you've got time to do that, but you haven't got time to produce a product that people have paid for. It's just very disconcerting to people.
It's pretty funny that you guys mentioned, or Hazard, you mentioned Talk as Jericho, and he was on the show. It was about an hour-long episode, and I picked out a few parts that I want you guys to hear. I want you guys to listen to them, because in these specific clips that I've picked out, there's some mention of Millican and his personal orders, his custom orders or his, replica orders, and what's going on concerning those things. I'm going to play the first one for you guys. This one is in regards to his shop, where he creates these belts and stuff like that. But check this out. There are a few things I want you to pick up. Check it out.
Do you do these? Do you have a shop that you go to work at, or do you do it in your garage, or where do you do these?
For years and years, I just worked out of the garage in my house, and now in the house that I've been in for about the last 8 years, I actually have a big shop behind my house. It's just a big workshop that it stays to this day very cluttered. And I don't even actually take collector. We made just countless collector belts, and we lost our original engraving company unexpectedly, just went under some sort of mismanagement issue or something there several years ago. And that caused a real backlog. So I stopped taking collector orders a few years ago, and I still have some things to make right there because it got to be so jammed up while I'm doing all this company work. So I'm always working on that, and I'm doing things, when the Young Rock television show or Chris Jericho called, then you do this work. Keeps the lights on, right, and it keeps your name out there. But these days, that shop will still stay cluttered up, even though at one time I was making all the WWE belts, and I started off making AEW belts. And so it had reason, and all these UFC belts, and on and on and on. Bellator, MMA. I mean, I will always forget something if you ask me who all I've worked for. But yes, original question, big shop out that all I have to do is walk up a little hill behind my house to get to.
What struck me was his shop is a little hill right behind his house. Got to take a few steps and he's there. Right. I'm backlogged on a few orders, but when UFC calls, when these big companies call, I got to take my 3 steps, my hop, skip, and a jump right to my shop. And then he said something about his engraving company, how it went under because of mismanagement. Dan, do you know anything about that?
Everything I know is based on second and third hand information. What I do know personally is I personally visited his shop in 2017. I saw it. It's picture like a 4-car garage in your backyard. All right. Beautiful garage. All right. You could fit 4 cars in there. He had like a pool table in it, but it was a workshop. It was set up as a workshop. But, doing an inventory, you can see some of the belts he had completed. You could see belts in various stages. He had a little setup where he did leather. He had a little setup where he did dual plating. He had a setup for paint. I counted maybe 20, 25 sets of plates there. This was 2017, and I knew at that time there was at least 30 people on Belt Talk who were old belts. So there were plates that were not there. And what I did notice, though, this is 2017 again, there was a stack of maybe 10 or 12 straps completely done with Lucky Hand, Scott Thibodeau's name in them. Because for a while there, doing the belts for Lip Sync Battle on MTV, right? Scott was doing the straps, sending them to Dave, and then Dave was doing the plates and the leather. The straps were sitting there. There was maybe like 2 sets of plates, but there wasn't enough sets of plates based on what I know people ordered. There was a lot
Hold on, we lost you.
Mid-South belts, but there wasn't really a lot of the other stuff.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, this was 2017. I had an order from 2014, waiting on a UWF TV, and I said, "Dave, what's the status of my order?" He goes, "Oh, it's coming back from the platers. I'll have it to you in 2 months." 2017. We're in 2023. I still don't have the belt. I still don't have a refund. I still don't have anything of that. But seeing that shop kind of opened my eyes, because there's shelving and the overhead is completely jammed full of wrestling memorabilia. All right. Dave was always a collector. He has all of his own wrestling memorabilia, but part of their licensing deal with the wrestling companies is he gets, I think it's maybe like 5 copies of every piece of merchandise that features one of his trademark designs.
Mm.
So like when the action figures come out and they come with the belt that's based on his design, he gets a box of them. So he has a ton of inventory of valuable memorabilia just sitting in customers. That's something that can be sold very easily to make
Right.
people whole again. But instead, what we're seeing is some of this stuff is trickling out on eBay, being sold by Adam Kelly, who lives down the road. And who knows what that money is going to.
Mm.
Now, in regards to talking about his etcher having a problem, I've talked to numerous people, and the story I can gather is the gentleman who runs Tucson Engraving, a gentleman named Ted Miller. A few years ago, he had supposedly some kind of issue with his machining or his shop, whatever it was. Basically, 50 plus sets of plates for Dave, for Reggie, and for other people were damaged or were never finished. And because Ted was doing it for so long, he just decided to close up shop.
Okay.
And the story I was told, I don't know if this is true or not, is that Dave and Rico flew out, met with Reggie, and they went to Ted's shop, and they tried to take back any of the plates they could, regardless of what condition they were in. They took back the original photo negatives of the really old Reggie artwork, and they tried to recover anything they could worth of value. Now, that being said, the story was the plates we got back were damaged. They didn't want to spend them. They already paid Ted for the plates. So
Okay.
supposedly these plates were so bad that they couldn't be used, and they didn't want to spend the money to have them fixed, or it might be just be cheaper to have new plates made. I don't know what the case is. I've seen random pictures of some of these plates, but nothing to the quantity that was discussed with me.
Right.
So from there, I was told Dave started hopping around trying to find other etchers, and whatever that is, I don't even know what to say about that. But going back to Ted Miller, the thing I started noticing is Ted Miller is on Facebook. And there seem to be a lot of people in the belt community who know who he is and messaging him and posting on his wall. And what we start seeing is, or the trend I start noticing is, a lot of Reggie Parks made belts start coming out years after Ted Miller is out of business, years after, for the last few years of his life, Reggie wasn't doing many belts, if at all.
Okay.
And the belts that did come out, Reggie was 86 when he passed away. In those later stages of his life, you realize, when you get older, you don't have the same physical capabilities as you once were.
Right.
So the quality of your work as an 86-year-old man is not going to be the same as you were putting out 10 years earlier, 20 years earlier. So the later in Reggie's career, the lower the quality of the leather tooling in his belts. And suddenly, a lot of Reggie belts started coming out and being sold by a few specific people, and the belts looked really good, really, really good. But you start trying to trace the dots, and despite me having absolutely zero proof, I think that there are at least 1 or 2 people that are having Ted Miller make belts for them with Reggie stamp, and we're either still are or previously were selling them as authentic Reggie belts. Now, I can't prove it.
Yeah.
It's a gut feeling based on everything I put out there. So make of it what you will, but you know, the real thing is Dave didn't mean to rob anyone. I don't think. I think this is a problem that every belt maker at one point or another has gotten to, where suddenly you become the flavor of the week. Everybody wants your stuff. You become big with the collectors. You become big with the wrestling companies. And firsthand experience, these wrestling companies, they want their stuff. They want it quick. They want the highest quality. You have to put everything else to the side and you have to focus solely on their stuff. Otherwise, you're not going to keep that contract work. And that's the stuff, that's your bread and butter.
Right.
Unfortunately, the collector stuff does get pushed aside. I think what happened was, you know, back when I ordered in 2014, Dave's like, yeah, my wait's about 2 or 3 years. Okay. Ordered an NWA US tag, got that in 2 years. Ordered a UWF TV and UWF heavyweight, got that in 3 years. Everything was fine. So like when I placed an order in 2014, I'm like, all right, I'll get it around 2017. I'm at his house in 2017. He tells me 2 months. I'm thinking, all right, this is a track. But I think.
Hold on, we lost you. Hold on.
Happened.
I don't think he's coming back. Hold on, Dan. Can you refresh your iPhone, bud? We lost you. Right at the good part of the story too. Refresh your iPhone. I'll get you back in here.
We're back.
There you are. Yeah, so we lost you so I'll give it a try again for the third one. So I ordered in, was it 20, or you said you were going to get it in 2 months.
Right, I was going to get it in 2 months, so I'm thinking that's par for the course. So
because you got the other two, no problem, when he said you would get them.
Like, you know, Dave has always been, I tell Dave, what, you know, I'm going to order a belt from you. What's going on? About 2 years, 3 years. And then eventually he's like, I don't tell people timetables anymore because, you know, you get a contract like Lip Sync Battle. They're doing X amount of shows per season. They want a belt per episode. So it's like, hey, we're ordering 25, 35, 45 belts. The Jericho Cruise, they want 20 belts, 30 belts, 40 belts. UFC wants 20 belts, 30 belts. You know, these are just numbers I'm pulling off the top of my head. I have no idea if they are accurate or not, but you can tell like the way these companies order in bulk. And, you know, if he's making 50 belts a year and he just took an order for, you know, 50 belts from 3 different companies, that sets him back another year. And then, you know, these shows become successful or these MMA companies become successful and they continue to order. So it just keeps pushing the stuff back further and further.
Right.
Which is why I believe in part, like he knew it wasn't sustainable. So he reached out to Mike Nicolau and Scott Thibodeau, Lucky Hands, and they were assisting him for a while. And I feel like they were making some progress there. And then all this stuff with Ted Miller went down. And I think that was just everything just broke from there.
Okay.
And, you know, at one point, I think, you know, I considered Dave a friend. You know, we were friends. And I don't think it was ever intended to end up like this. But I think at a certain point, you just get so buried and so overwhelmed that you really don't know what to do. But he's been offered numerous lifelines as far as ways to dig out of that hole.
Okay.
There have been people who have made him 6-figure offers for the copyrights of some of the more lucrative collector belts. There are people who have been proposing, all right, we're going to license the artwork from you. We're going to have these 2 or 3 or 4 trusted belt makers start making your stuff and you start getting a cut of it. And they won't do it. So that really, you start feeling, you don't feel bad for him when people are trying to throw him lifelines and he continues to turn it down. And I think even though he wasn't going to make that stuff up to begin with, but then when Reggie Parks passed away, Reggie had his own outstanding queue of several years. And then if the people who purchased belts from Reggie Parks, who paid Rico through PayPal, It says on there, your belt will be completed by a member or by somebody on the team. The LLC consisted of Rico, Dave, and Reggie. So legally, based on that wording, now that Reggie passed away, those orders should be fulfilled by Dave. And during the last few years, while Reggie was still alive, Dave was telling people, I am not going to honor that. I told Rico years ago to take that out of the PayPal wording. I'm not doing it. It's not my responsibility. So then the other issue becomes, there's a whole different side to this. It's not just Dave. It's what happened with Reggie, what happened with Rico. There's a lot of theories out there of what Rico's involvement was. And then there's people who think that Reggie was kept isolated. Myself, several of the people who had Reggie's direct phone number could call him. We can order a belt and get the belt within 6 months to a year. No problem. There's people who ordered WWF licensed belts through Rico, 6-7 years ago, who've had no updates. So is there a disconnect? Why does Reggie not think he has any orders going? And all of the stuff I'm saying is just hearsay, but there's no communication. Like, just get out there, be honest with the people, tell them what's going on, tell them the status. People are going to be more inclined to be sympathetic to you and understanding if you're honest with them. When you go silent on Twitter for 3 or 4 years and only pop up to do the occasional interview, to do the occasional wrestling memorabilia show, it really rubs collectors the wrong way.
110%.
Right. This whole situation should have been handled a lot differently. And at the end of the day, the same thing happened to Jamar. The same thing happened to Paul Bledsoe. The same thing happened to Mike Vartanian. Like, you go through the list of belt makers through the last 40 years, and there's a very small list that you can count on one hand who have been able to sustain the output and production based on their success. It's a double-edged sword. You become the big man in the business. Everybody wants you, but then you're so overwhelmed you can't keep up with the demand. But then you have the collectors who are offering you thousands of dollars up front with, if somebody's offering you, 2,000, 3,000, and some of these collectors are ordering 3-4 belts at a time. Somebody's willing to offer you $10,000 in a cut. Like, how do you say no to that? So it's a trap. It really is a trap. Doing belts for television companies is a very difficult situation to handle when you're taking orders from the general public.
It seems like, well, I don't know. A part of me thinks, because this has been going on a long time, Dan, and Hazard, chime in if you want to add to it. But I feel like at one point it maybe was, biting off more than he could chew. Right? But then when you start getting this amount of money up front and you're starting to see yourself being able to get away with ghosting or not responding, does it go from maybe no intent to intent? Because look at this. I have this email here from this customer. Now, he gave me the okay to provide this. This is from 2012. All right. 2012. It's from a gentleman named Gav. He posted in the group today. I let him know we were doing the show. He has his own little thing where he does custom belts for people, not licensed belts, not replicas, just little custom work, right? And these are it's called, here it is. It's Main Event Belts. He does a little bag, he does all that jazz. So you can check them out on Facebook if you want to see the custom work that he does. Here is an email of what he paid Dave. This is June 22nd of 2013. They were going over the cost of the title, which is the dual-plated winged eagle with the WWF logo, and he paid, including shipping, $32.55.20. Paid him upfront, in full, PayPal. Then he ordered 2 more belts. He ordered a tag and the Intercontinental. So he's out. He told me he's out a total of $9,000 from 2013. He did reach out to see if maybe he could rush the order, right? Maybe if I'll pay extra Dave will rush it for me. So here it is. Let me see if I can go from, I believe it's here. So here's where he paid him. He goes, Dave, this is August 1st, 2013. Dave, I just want to let you know that you should have the payment for the dual-plated Winged Eagle tomorrow. Regards. He goes, sounds good, Gav. Thank you. Very much appreciate your business, Dave. And then, thanks, Gav. Then you've got the funds, Dave. So the funds were sent to him, and then he thanks him for the funds. And then here, he was asking, I'm guessing, about a rush order. And then he asks Dave, do logoed belts go in a different queue? I'm guessing apart from customs or non-logoed queues. Do you think it would be under 3 years? This is the response from Dave, and this is his last response from Dave Millican. June 19th, 2013. 10 years ago, almost. The licensed belts are given all the priority they can be. But these aren't factory stamped out belts, and a lot of time goes into each one. Understood. As for taking on help, this isn't exactly something just anyone can be trusted to do. Mike Nicolau is working with me some, but he already has his own backlog to deal with. Hopefully soon nothing will be taking 3 years. Thanks, Dave. So basically he told Gav that it would be 3 years. You'll have your titles as confirmed in this email. It's been 10. It's been 10. And zero response from Millican.
Let's talk about that. So this is another thing that you get through second, third, fourth party channels. All right. I noticed you blurred out the emails. All right. If you still go to Dave's website, you will see his email still listed as mmbelts12@aol.com.
And that's what matches.
The story I was told is that somebody attempted to brute force hack the email in order to gain access to the artwork, and AOL locked out the account. Thus, Dave no longer has access to his AOL account.
Okay.
He apparently set up a Gmail account and is interacting with people that way. But again, I don't know the full story because there's been no contact. There's been no communication. So, like, if Dave came out and said, hey, my email was hacked by a competitor, I have no access to my old backlog queue. If there's something, you're waiting on, please contact me, would make things a lot easier.
I was about to say, that's very simple. Go on your Instagram, go on your Twitter.
Right.
Your public service announcement. My email was hacked. If you're waiting on an order from me, please email me here. Right. Or DM me your email. If he doesn't want to give his email out, DM me your contact info. We'll go from there.
Right. The reality of the situation is the fact that how many people, so for example, from the time I ordered a belt that I've not yet received, I've moved house twice.
Yeah.
And he would have only had my original house address. Similar with the email, how many people would have ordered something, not known that he has a new email, and some people aren't on social media, so how are they going to know that there's any new form of contact? Not that there's been any kind of announcement, like Dan said, in that the biggest frustration is that there has been no communication. There's been communication regarding interviews and podcasts and stuff, but not with the people who have paid him money that then he still has outstanding orders for, dating back a decade ago. Right. And that's the biggest concern, because there's, as Dan said, he and I have heard things from people, but not from the original source. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like I said at the beginning, and I said this to you, Vinny, just before we went on, I don't think he intentionally set out to screw people, but by not being honest and not being forthcoming with information, he's done that intentionally or unintentionally. That's what he's done.
And whether there's intent or not, you're still doing it. It's something that you have to resolve. You can't just say, fuck it. Whatever, I got these orders to do. These are more important. No, these people paid you.
Right.
Thousands.
But at a point, I'm going to go back to my story, visiting him in 2017. All right. The guys, me, him, and the other people who were there, we were out in the shop. We were looking at the belts, looking at the workshop. Our significant others were inside the house because they all hate belts. They all hate wrestling. They
Interesting.
don't want nothing to do with it. They're
Shocker.
right. Like we're letting the guys have their guys' weekend. We're just gonna have
Just
girl
chill.
time.
Yeah.
And at the time, Dave's wife at the time pretty much said, most days he doesn't do much. He's content living off the royalty checks from WWE. And this is firsthand information, which might be controversial, but if that's the type of attitude he had at that time, I think he kind of just, I think he realizes, he's been around since the 90s, early 90s. There's been no repercussions taken against Jamar. There's been no repercussions taken against any of the other scammers. So you get to a point where it's like, is somebody going to go to his house? Is somebody going to confront him at a gimmick table at a wrestling event or a convention? No, what's going to happen? You take a belt, you're going to get arrested. You put your hands on him, you're going to get arrested.
Right.
You're going to end up spending more money on legal fees, on bail, on finding a lawyer than you are what you're out of on the belt. And a lot of people say, well, why don't you sue him? You know how much lawyers are? All right.
Yeah.
Unless you can find a lawyer who will do this pro bono for you, you are not going to end up in a situation where you make your money back.
You're going to spend 10 grand like that.
Right. If you're a person who has money to burn and you want to prove a point, then yes, you're gonna make a point. But again, the courts are not a collection agency, so you can take Dave to.
We'll wait the 3 seconds.
He doesn't have to pay you. So for the people out there who are still owed belts from Dave, my advice to you is to hire a lawyer, but just have them create a letter stating what your order was, provide all of the proof of your purchase and payment information and what you ordered, and send it certified mail to the Tennessee State District Attorney, and then also send a copy to Dave. There are people who have done that. And
here it is. I was just going to say, David McIntosh here just commented, I have contacted an attorney and she sent Dave and Rico a certified letter. Dave kept his and never responded. Rico refused his.
Right. There are
We lost you, Dan.
There were people
you
who
go.
were successful doing that method and received refunds and received their belts or received an alternate belt. And I think, this is the advice I've been giving on Belt Talk for the last few years. So I think as more and more people have done it, Dave's kind of realized that if he doesn't appease those people, that the state attorney general is going to start an investigation on him. So, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if you are somebody who is owed a belt by Dave, you just need to make his life very difficult. You need to be out there tweeting, emailing, posting. You just need to make yourself a pain in his side that he wants to make go away. And
you need to embarrass him, basically. That's what you need to do. You need to embarrass him.
You have to embarrass yourself to try to get something out of somebody.
Right.
You should have known better.
And
again,
go
all of this could have been prevented through communication.
Going back to the clip from earlier when Dave said, I stopped taking collector orders a few years ago, but this has been going on way further back in 2019. This was going back to really when there was starting to be red flags was, I think, around 2014 into 2015. So he shouldn't have been taking orders for that long. And it's just irresponsible for him to go on continuing taking orders because, and unfortunately, I think his mindset, as Dan said, if he's willing to carry on living off of the royalties and stuff, I think his mindset at this point is, okay, you can hate me, but I'm still getting paid, so therefore, what do I care?
He here's the thing. He hasn't lost any credibility where it matters most, right? And that's with the wrestling companies. That's with the pro wrestlers themselves. That's with TV shows, movie studio, whatever. He hasn't lost anything from that. So therefore, He's not bothered.
Right.
He's unbothered, and he's making money. And real quick, let me bring this up. Justin with the $10 super chat here. Thank you, Justin. Says this. Both Millican and Jamor complain about overseas belt makers copying their designs. Well, it's their fault. They shouldn't have screwed over their customers. And with that, I want to go to the second clip for you guys to view. This is from the same Talk is Jericho episode. This is regarding custom orders. How does you go about custom orders? Check this out.
You mentioned you were doing custom orders for people that obviously want a replica. What's different about the replica from the original?
You know, nobody's gonna have one of that particular title. But when we copy the old Winged Eagle titles, we do it the exact same way. You know, we do those the exact same way that they were made for the company back in the day. There's no quality difference when you're.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When you're paying the top dollar for the real handmade belt, you get the real handmade belt.
And are people paying, like, if it's 10 grand, they pay the 10 grand or whatever?
Well, you know, we stopped doing that because of the logo issues and that sort of thing. And people don't want the altered logos. They want the old original classic logos and stuff. But the resale market on them is crazy. You can go 10 grand easy on an old, you know, say Winged Eagle, or, you know, probably 6, 7, 8 grand for a copy of the Intercontinental title that's done the authentic way. Because we're not currently making new ones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get this busy and things fall through the cracks, and then you realize, okay, there's an Intercontinental belt I didn't make and I've got to make it. Well, nobody's going to come after you for making things right, and you have to do that. But as far as offering them to the public, we're not even doing that anymore. So the ones out there on the resale market, it's crazy to see $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 for a belt that was never even used in the ring.
When he says things falling through the cracks, does he mean a crack the size of the Grand Canyon? Because that's what happens.
I was just gonna say, he mentions how, you know, some orders have fallen through the cracks, and they're not going to go after him for making things right with the customer. But as I'm listening to that clip, I'm thinking to myself, is he now dissatisfied with the $3,000 he got, seeing them sell for 10 grand and saying, well, you know what? I can throw a fucking couple of these up and make 10 each.
Let's go over that, because it has happened. So number one, I will refute almost everything he said there. Number one, 2013 NWA Legends Convention, where everyone was giving him the cash. He had a bunch of the ring used belts there in his.
Hold on. Come back to us, Dan.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. 2013 NWA Legends Convention. We go back to Dave's suite. They gave him a suite on the top floor with the business suite. Had all the ring used belts on there. You might see some of my videos I've taken. Dave's wife had the laptop open. She has an Excel spreadsheet with every order. So for him to say that things fell through the cracks is bogus. All right. His wife is very good at managing, and there was a spreadsheet, I don't know if it's a master spreadsheet or what, but there is some type of list that exists with the outstanding orders, the payments that were made, the payments that are due, etc. Okay. Now the second part is going back to like 2008. You know, like I started flipping figs, and then I started working up to flipping belts. You know, I'd make a few $100s on belts. And like at the conventions, Dave, me and Dave would laugh, because like there was times where like I'd help him with the table, watch the table. He goes, Dan, you're making more money flipping my belts than I do actually making them. So, you know, that's always been in his head, that his belts are worth more money than what he's charging for them. And to his credit, he hasn't raised prices in a decade, which is actually kind of weird. Me personally, when I first started my belt company, I was doing 3-plate belts for $9.99. My baseline cost right now is $2,500, and that's not because.
Well, it's because you deliver them. That's why.
But the part of it is, all right, the economics. Prices have gone up, yes. But at the same time, if I was still selling belts, number one, I can't make a belt for $9.99 anymore based on the economics of the world. But if I was still competitively bargain priced, I would be overwhelmed with orders. So I am purposely setting my prices high. That way I do not get into the situation Dave has.
Right.
So, Dave is a great belt maker, but he's a horrible businessman. And there have been very smart, very successful business people around him who have tried giving him advice that he doesn't seem to want to take. And
yeah. Listen, the reason why he doesn't have to raise his prices is because he's not making any belts. So therefore, there's no cost. Right. He's stuck in this cycle where people are just going to keep paying me.
Right.
And they're not going, and I can literally just ignore them, and they're not going to do shit about it. What are you going to say?
You have to be careful with the tenses as well. I don't know if Dan will remember this, but I was having a communication with someone on Twitter. I think it was last year, and I posted a tweet about belts or something, and someone has commented saying, "Well, Dave does do really good work," and I replied with correction, "did." And then he commented saying he still does, and it was a whole back and forth saying you can't say you're still doing quality work if you're not producing a product. And the argument basically was that I couldn't prove that he wasn't producing what he said he was producing. I was like, I've got 3 belts on order that says so. So
right. So let's discuss that specific instance. Okay.
Hold on. David said he can confirm what Dan said regarding Dave's denial of responsibility for the Midwest LLC. Prior to no longer responding, he told me he was no longer part of the LLC. And then he added, he actually went as far as to deny ever hearing of Midwest or having any involvement in, I guess that's the name of the company, Midwest LLC.
No.
Oh, there you go.
The LLC was Parks Millican Mann LLC.
Okay.
At one point, the LLC registration did lapse.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told that Rico re-upped it solely for the purpose of the lawsuit of the Figures Inc. and Ring of Honor replicas.
Okay.
I don't know the accuracy of that, but that's what I was told. There's a few things we need to discuss. So going back to Shane's Twitter argument, the argument he had that with was a longtime collector known as the Russian Nightmare, is what he used to go on in the Yahoo boards back in 1998. That's how long we've been doing this.
Drago.
Right.
Gentlemen, very good for your age, Dan.
Thank you. Gentleman's name is Ashvin. Ashvin, I consider him a friend. He is a longtime collector, one of the most knowledgeable people in this hobby, one of the founding fathers of the internet belt community. He deserves all the respect, but he is personal friends with Dave. He has been personal friends with Dave for a long time. Dave has a number of...
Hold on.
Going on is very, very skewed.
All right, we lost you at he's been personal friends with Dave for a long time.
Yes. His opinion on the matter is very skewed.
I would assume so, yeah.
I've tried talking to him. Ashvin knows more information than what he is willing to share, and his excuse is always, well, it's not my story to tell, but things aren't the way they seem.
Mm.
Well, tell us. Somebody needs to tell us. Dave's not going to tell us. Rico's not going to tell us. Somebody who knows something, just say something. I shouldn't have to be digging tooth and nail to anybody who's associated with this people to try to get some kind of status out of them. So,
do you think the people are just quiet, Dan, because they're afraid of not getting their own orders?
There were people like that, but I think those people have long given up on the fact. So now they're just...
You think they're just quietly
right.
letting it go and just taking it as a loss?
They're taking it as a loss. And what I think is that the people closest to Dave are keeping their loyalty to him based on what he can do for them.
Correct.
Regardless whether or not he's actually making belts, Dave still has many contacts in the business.
Mm.
So if you're a collector who wants a ring used belt and you don't like the prices that ring used belts are going for on the open market, your best bet would be buddy up to Dave. And then when something comes back, you would have first shot at it. Now, when Dave needs money, what's the first thing he does? He either sells a ring used belt from his collection, or he helps broker a deal between a private collector and somebody who has something they need, or he helps out WWE acquire a belt that they've been looking for, etc. So there is benefits to loyalty. So there are people around him who I believe are selfishly only.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like Dave Millican has any genuine friends.
I think he's burned all of those bridges.
Right.
Right.
I had an exchange with someone, so I reposted on my Instagram story today about this show, and I got a message from someone. They don't follow me. I've never had any sort of interaction with them. It was my first exchange with them, and he basically said, "I don't know what all this is with about Dave. He's always been really good to me whenever I've ordered belts, and I've always got mine. So I don't see a point, basically." And I replied to him saying, "Well, you're in a very fortunate position to have gotten everything. I don't know who this person was. Maybe he was a friend of David. I don't know. You're in a position to be very fortunate to get all of your belts. However, you can't apply the logic of he's okay because he did good by me. Because at the end of the day, if someone robbed a store or someone shot someone or murdered someone, would you say that they're a good person because it didn't happen to your store or it didn't happen to a member of your family? No, you wouldn't. At the end of the day, if someone's doing wrong by someone else, you can't by default say that it's okay, they're a good person in my book because they just didn't do it to me specifically. It's a BS argument.
And not only by someone else, but by, listen, let's face it. When you look at the thumbnail of this show, I have
to ask, where did you get that photo?
Website.
It's right down here. He's holding the Dome Globe, I believe.
Wow.
That's his header. Well, it's like if you go to his website, it's still using Flash.
Yeah.
With Javi. All right. So Dave never managed his own website. Back in the day, Javi Cortez used to manage his website for him. And if you go to DaveMillicanBelts.com, you get Flash. Due to the insecurity with Flash, most modern web browsers will block any type of Flash from playing. But that was part of the introduction.
The thing is, when you look at the thumbnail, though, there are multiple, and a lot of them were taken from Belt Talk. There are multiple comments that we posted just to give you a peek at to what's going on, and we only got the small ones that fit on the thumbnail. I was telling Hazard, there are paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. I mean, literal pages of people that have spent thousands and thousands of dollars with this man.
Right.
Paid him in full. Have waited 10 years and are still holding out hope.
It goes back to Vinny. I don't know if you remember a few weeks back. So when you originally contacted me to do this, I'd sent you a shot. So back when I ordered my Oval IC, I think in 2013, 2014, thereabouts, after I'd ordered that and I was in about a year and a half into that order. And that's when because I considered Dave a friend as well. And at that time, the communication was no longer happening. So I'd email and I'd get nothing back. Normally it would be I'll catch up with you, Shane, when I've got an update. And there was nothing. And at that point, back in 2014, 2015 is when when people would ask me, how do I get a Winged Eagle? How do I get a classic IC, that kind of stuff. And that's when I'd start dissuading people saying, don't bother going to Dave, don't bother going to Reggie. It's not going to happen, kind of thing. That's why I sent you that screenshot a few weeks back. It's like, it became, what's the word I'm looking for? Ill-advised or inappropriate or in poor taste to actually even mention where they would come from, because the chances are they could potentially then go to that person and then they'd be stuck in a bad spot when that's when really it all start going downhill.
And then you lose all credibility because you recommended these people to the ace. Right. By the way, guys, if you are enjoying the show, follow Dan. Okay, you can follow him at Belt Fan Dan. That's Belt Fan Dan on all social media platforms. He's on Twitter. He's on the gram. Are you on YouTube, Dan? You on YouTube?
No, I'm YouTube demonetized my account due to a certain person.
So you're in demon status. So
a certain person from West Virginia who claimed ownership of certain types of custom belts.
I
created it.
So follow him on Twitter and Instagram, and Mr. Hazard at 5. He is on Twitter, he's on Instagram, and he's on the tube. You know who he is. And also, guys, please like this video. If you're enjoying the content, subscribe to the channel. I have another clip for these gentlemen to listen to, and this one's a doozy. This one's called Enough Business.
So you have enough business now where you don't have to make those customs anymore. You have enough business from companies, and you said your garage is cluttered. There's that much of a demand.
Yeah, it's really, to be honest, Chris, I will always do it just as Reggie did all the way through his life. But things have changed so much. I don't make my living really in the championship belt business anymore. I make my living more in the championship belt licensing business.
How do you mean?
Well, because, you have video games, and you have toys, and you have replica championship belts. And I am backlogged right now. I probably have somewhere near oh my gosh, you get on the internet and it's like, oh, he owes people hundreds of belts. No, but I do owe somewhere between 35 and 40 out still right now to make right. And that, so I'm always trying to do that. In the meantime, Mack truck calls, the Rocks people call, and you do these things because you have to.
Interesting.
So you don't say no to that stuff because it doesn't make sense to say no to that stuff. So I'll always be a championship belt maker, and my shop will probably always look like that. But, primarily I do things to protect what Reggie started, and then what I helped finish and what I helped build. And so again, toys, video games, replica championship belts, and that sort of thing is very much a part of what I do now, as much as the handmade belts.
He's living the life, isn't he? This man's living the life. Let's start with this. 35 to 40.
Allow me to brag for a second.
Go ahead.
What's Young Rock on? Season 3?
I believe so. Season 3.
I think so.
Every season they have asked me to make their belts.
Hey, that deserves an applause, Dan.
Hey. Every season I've had to turn them down. Because, like I said earlier, like some of these companies, like the belts are the last thing that they think about. They don't really put a lot of, they're props. Let's be honest, They're glorified props. And then they come to me and they want a lot done really quick, and based on what my other what I owe to other people, it's just something I can't do. I would love to make a belt for them. I would love to make several belts for them. So like this past season, they came with a list of belts, and blah, blah, blah.
How many was it, Dan? Was it a large number?
It was single digits, but it was enough that it would have kept me busy.
Keep you busy, yeah.
So like this season, Rocky Maivia wins the Classic IC belt. They wanted me to make one. I was like, no, that's regardless of what has happened, Reggie and Dave's property is their property. All right. I will not encroach on their trademarks and copyrights unless I have permission or something drastically changes. So they asked for like a Classic IC. Classic IC was one of the belts they asked for.
Okay.
I said, okay, I cannot make this. I can sell you a pre-made one. I can re-leather a replica. And that's what they thought. All right, we'll just go with the replica. And then like they were asking about the USWA belts. And in previous seasons, they wanted like the WrestleMania 1 tags that were done by Johnny Rods. And like there was a lot of specific stuff that they wanted. And if you look at the show, the belts, like some of them are more accurate than others, and you can tell which they went out and got made last second and which ones that they went and had done right. So like Dave said, like you can't turn down the Rock. Well, the Rock, number one, doesn't have anything to do with it. It's a production company. And number two, I've turned them down 3 years in a row. And like, it's not something to boast about, but it's just the fact, the way this business is. Like, he's so concerned about doing these big name companies, but they don't pay as well as you think they do. And the demand is there that it puts all of your other orders to the back burner. It's like, well, you've already been paid in full. Well, that can wait. That's not the attitude to have. Like, I have people who have been waiting, And, I have certain people in my queue that have been waiting longer than they should have, and I apologize to them. And there's people I've given refunds or offered refunds or tried to make right. And it's very easy to get caught in that trap. And, Dave's making his bread and butter on the licensing, but he's making bread and butter on the licensing for designs that he had no part of. He's making
Right.
all of his money based on the legacy of Reggie Parks. And that's what really sucks. Okay.
And what makes me think that is he's basically saying, I'm sitting back. That's what he said in that clip. I'm sitting back. I don't even make money on making belts anymore. I'm making all my money on licensing agreements, on toys, on this, on that. He sounded like a big shot. Meanwhile, he said he owes, listen, I've gotten a little backlogged. I owe 35 to 40. They make it sound like on the internet that I owe hundreds of belts. I owe 35, maybe 45 belts. Listen, if you were a real businessman, you would know the exact number of belts that you owe, especially over a 10-year span. If it's taken that long, you should know in your head. So, okay, let's go with him. Let's appease the argument. 35, right? The one guy that I just had the emails from, that's 3. One person, that's 3. Hazard, what are you waiting on?
I'm waiting on 3 belts. So technically, if those numbers are accurate, I'm about 10% of his outstanding orders, according to that math, which I don't think is the case.
So we just found 20% of his orders between 2 people. 20% of his outstanding orders.
All on Belt Talk, and we've gotten over 50 orders. That's
50 orders from people that saw the poll.
50 people on Belt Talk alone. And you know what? The thing that Dave has always kind of tried to cut me down. He goes, well, he's probably right about. He goes, Belt Talk isn't anything. Like the internet isn't anything. I get a lot of my business through major companies and through people who have no affiliation with belt sites and private collectors. And you know what? He's probably right. But if a small little shit website like Belt Talk has 50 orders outstanding, how many people out there that don't have access to the internet or refuse? There's people who just don't want anything to do with technology. How many of those people ordered belts from Dave, ordered belts from Reggie? All right,
and a lot of them, Dan, are private people. They don't even want to be known to be belt collectors. Is that correct?
Right. So for, he busted out 30, 40 belts for Jericho's cruise this year. Okay, well, how long do you think that took him?
Well, it depends on how quick Jericho needed it. That's what I'd say. Listen, because he talked about that in the podcast. He talked about, because Jericho asked him, he's like, listen, I know I've ordered some belts with you for the last, I believe it was 3 cruises. And it was for their special VIP people. It's a once in a lifetime belt that you get to flex and show that you were a part of the VIP portion of the cruise. And and Dave was like this. He said, normally, I don't take on those orders because sometimes they're just not worth it, but I know you and I have a really good business relationship, and I'm willing to go the extra mile for you. So whatever you need, you guys call me and I get it done. And in my head, I'm thinking, man, you just said that you owe 35 to 45 and you knocked out 10 for Jericho. How fucked up does he even realize how many people read between the lines of what he's saying, or does he care?
He probably realizes, but I don't think it's a matter of him caring.
He doesn't give a shit. He's at the point, honestly, Dan, where he doesn't give a fuck. As long as it doesn't affect his major deals and his licensing agreements and his real income, fuck it. That's where he's at.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. People need to make noise. They need to really, really bring this to the forefront, and they need to literally annoy him and embarrass him. That's all you could do at this point, because he clearly, unequivocally doesn't give a fuck.
I remember a few years ago. So it's one of these things where you can post something innocently online about anything, and if someone gets offended or upset by it, 9 times out of 10, it's because they take it personally because it relates to them in some way. I got blocked by Dave on Twitter about 5 years ago, give or take, because it was when the UFC redid their championship into the new legacy one that they've got going on. And they put out a really nice video, like as a kind of tribute to the old style design and upgrading to the new one and stuff. And there was interviews there from both Dave and Jamar regarding the old championship. And Jamar said something to the degree of, some people order their belts and they want them yesterday. And I retweeted it and basically saying, a really lovely video about championship belts, something that I'm a big advocate for. It's unfortunate that some people in this video, though, are doing these interviews while they still have outstanding orders going back a decade. That was actually aimed towards Jamar and his comment, but Dave was the one who blocked me.
So what does that tell you? He related to the tweet. He's like, you know what? I felt that because I'm in the same situation. I'm blocking this because I don't want to see it. Out of sight, out of mind.
Well, yeah. And that's the case with most of his customers, because if he's not going to be present on social media, like Dan says, when it comes to being forthcoming with information, well, if you're not there to receive the backlash, does the backlash matter? If a tree falls down the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make any noise? That's the situation they seem to be playing by.
Exactly.
But he is on social media. If you keep a close eye, he likes tweets. Okay? He's still active on there. So despite him not actually posting, he's on there every day. He's liking stuff. So he's staying silent, but he's not necessarily making himself off the grid.
Because he's afraid to post.
Oh no, you can lurk on social media quite easily. All it means is you just don't click on that bar that says mentions.
He's afraid to post. He's afraid to post because he knows the backlash he's going to get. And I believe on his Instagram, he's even blocked some of the comments. Just blocked comments completely. Because he knows he's going to get flooded with the shit that he's doing. And it's sad. And honestly, man, it really frustrates me knowing what you guys have told me and knowing this dude's history, that he's out there. That's what really irritated me. He's out there on ad-free shows and talk as Jericho and just flexing, bro. Taking it all in, acting like he's the king, he's the ace. And whether or not he tries to be humble in his interviews, his arrogance pours out. When you know the truth, you can see how much of a scumbag and scammer this motherfucker really is, honestly. To me,
I don't know if it's arrogance, but it's an insincerity when it comes to talking about the collectors. In that it's not so much arrogance, but it's being nonchalant and just simply not caring.
That's the issue.
Well, listen, when you think about it, wrestling is a carny business. It's based on pulling something over on the simple, unsuspecting fan. And unfortunately, it goes from the wrestlers to the promoters, even down to the belt makers. It's before he made belts, Dave was a promoter. Dave would promote independent shows. So he's got that mentality. And like, I truly think that Dave never intended to swindle or pull one over on any of the people. I think he just got in over his head, and he got to the point where he just said, you know what, F it. I'm never going to make up this stuff. Let me just do what I can do just to survive. At a certain point, your survival instinct kicks in, and you only look out for yourself, and you just, everybody else, tough shit. So right. I think that's the point he got to. And unfortunately, I think what we need to do is come together as a hobby or as a community, and we need to amplify this message.
Signal boost it, get it out there. Yeah.
Right. Like, that's people ask, like, why are you tweeting? Like, you're a belt maker yourself. Aren't you worried about the backlash? Like, I don't have to do belts to survive. I can quit tomorrow and I can be okay. And I do, like, I've always said, the day that it becomes like a job instead of a hobby or instead of a love or a craft, I'm getting out.
Right.
And I've sold some of the belts from my personal collection because, last time I was on your show, I was in my old house. I had my big old collection behind me, and
I was expecting that. I forgot that you moved.
I've moved, so
yeah.
I'm in a new house, and the office, we're waiting on contractors and all that stuff. You know how it is, like just waiting on people. When you're waiting on people, so
especially nowadays, it's insane.
Right. But there's some belts that I looked at, and it's
But
like,
you won't wait 10 years for your contractor, though.
right. But you look at certain belts and like they start to become tainted. If you've been around this hobby long enough, you look at certain belts and instead of thinking about the person that won them or the match at WrestleMania that made you a huge fan of the belt, you start thinking about like the business side. It's like, oh man, that was made by this guy and he did this to this person, and he did that to that person. And it's like, I don't want anything to do with that. So there's certain belts in my collection that I had that I just sold. And I think as a collector or as a group of community, what we need to do is come together and just amplify the message that, hey, we need to get certain people out of this hobby. And I'm not talking about bootleggers. Like the bootleggers are always going to be there. And you guys know I hate bootleggers and like, don't steal my stuff. And
Yeah.
the stuff with like, all right, I've accepted the fact that's never going to happen. But, you know, we need to come together.
Turn the corner, Dan.
No, I haven't turned the corner. I'm a realist. It's like I go in some of these groups and it's like, all right, listen, as long as you're not stealing my shit, you're fine. All right? And like, I understand you guys are stealing from Dave, you're stealing from Reggie, you're stealing from Jamar because they took your money and you're waiting 10 years on the belt.
Yeah.
But what happens is like it's a downward slope where, okay, we can steal from him. But what justifies you guys stealing from me, stealing from Top Rope Belt, stealing from Wildcat, stealing from Orlando? It's either usually the mentality of the people who purchase bootlegs is it's all or nothing. It's not, you're not saying, all right, I'm only going to purchase a bootleg from Dave, Reggie, Jamar because they screwed collectors. I'm only going to go authentic for the Top Rope, the Wildcat.
Hold on, we lost you. Hold on. Hang in there. Uh-oh.
Refresh.
Refresh, Dan. See, that's where that bootleg rant gets you. Man. Where you at?
WWE heard him.
We lost you, Dan. Come back. There you go. We lost you about 15 seconds ago.
All right. So what I'm saying is usually with the collectors, it's all or nothing. You're going to buy bootlegs or you're not going to buy bootlegs. What we need to do is we need to signal boost this. We need to get the word out, you know, because like, a few years ago, there was the Me Too movement, and I'm not going to compare this to Me Too, but the same kind of concept is you have a bunch of people who were done wrong by a certain person or certain people within a community, and everybody's too afraid to speak up about it because they're afraid of the consequences.
And what are the consequences, Dan? What are the consequences of speaking up?
Well, that's the thing. The consequences are you're going to get blacklisted. You're not going to get your belt. You're not going to get your order. You're not going to get a refund. Well, there is strength in numbers. So if the community can come together as a whole, and you present a list out on Twitter of, all right, here's 150 people who are still owed belts from Dave and Reggie. Well, maybe somebody who means something like Chris Jericho takes notice of that and thinks twice about using Dave for his next cruise.
Right.
Or maybe the producers from Young Rock see that and say, hey, this guy owes so many belts. But unfortunately, there are still people who don't care. Like there is one company I dealt with who straight up said, and I quote, I don't give a shit who Dave owes belts to. As long as he gets our belts to us on time, we will continue to use them. So that's the type of mentality you're fighting.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of these people, Dan, that have, like you said, they're afraid of speaking up. Honestly, it's one or the other, right? Either you speak up and you get a chance at something happening, or you don't speak up and nothing comes through. Because honestly, guys, listen. Let's be real here. 10 years. 10 years. And he's lying about the numbers. We know that. You really think he's be like, oh shit. Let me get Mike from 2012. That's right. I got to do his winged eagle. Let me start that right away in my shop. You think he's going to do that? No. Unfortunately, I think at this point, if you've waited that long, you're pretty much fucked.
If you are
So-
a private collector, if you are not a big company, if you are not one of these big VIP collectors, if you have an order from Reggie or you have an order from Dave, there is a high percentage chance in the 90 percentile that you will not receive your order or receive a refund unless you pursue legal action.
Right.
And unfortunately, with most people, you will spend more money on the legal pursuit than you will ever recouping from court or from the value of your belt order. And then the other thing is, oh, why don't you guys get a class action lawsuit? Do you see how we argue on Facebook? You think a bunch of us can come together and agree on a class action lawsuit? Like, come on. Like, let's be real.
I mean, going back to like Dave's collection order. So I received a belt from him after a 5-year wait in 2018. Dan mentioned that someone had received either their belt or a refund after sending him a legal letter. Outside of those two instances, Dan, do you remember the last time he actually delivered a belt to a collector?
He delivered an Andre 87 within the last 6 months to a very important VIP person who forgot they even ordered the belt.
Wow.
That is the last instance I have heard of a person receiving a belt.
So he remembered for the customer that he owed them a belt.
He gave it to him at his birthday party.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not counting that.
Wow. Now listen, before we close out the show, I have a question for you, Dan, and I want your opinion on this. For some reason, like you said with your theories, I don't have any proof on this either, right? Do you think towards the last years of Reggie's life, since Rico and Dave was it Rico taking orders for Reggie? Or Dave, was it those guys just handling all of his orders? Because he wasn't a social media guy or internet guy, right? He was just over the phone and that's it.
So the thing with Reggie was you can order through him directly if you had his phone number.
Okay.
Otherwise, you would order through Rico.
Okay.
Because Rico is like technically his online presence. But that was only recent, okay? People might remember Ed Schumann. Ed Schumann was the head of merchandising for the NWA, and he ran NWA Midwest. You know, so everybody, if you've met Ed, you have an opinion on him one way or the other, but he was a good businessman. He kept everything in line. He kept everything in check. Ed passed away several years ago, and when Ed passed away, the responsibilities of the LLC fell on Rico, and I think that was a big turning point as far as the orders going and the fulfillment of the orders. And I don't know enough to speak on it other than a gut feeling. And let's kind of like rewind back. The Fig Inc. license deal, as far as getting WWF, WCW, ECW license belts, is all through WWE. And from what Jamar told me, Jamar and Ed Schumann were trying to go back and forth in regards to what the license fee would be. They wanted the license directly from WWE. While they were arguing back and forth about what the percentage should be, Figures Toy Company stepped in and they were the ones who got it. So if you ordered a WWF, WCW, ECW licensed belt, the money, the royalty was paid to Figures Toy Company. Figures Toy Company took their cut, and then they were supposed to pay WWE. Both Ed Schumann and Jamar say that Figures Toy Company fudged the numbers on replica sales and an amount of belts that were ordered in order to pay them less money in royalties.
Okay.
So both sides starting to take licensed replica orders on their own. And I highly doubt that those orders, the license fees, were paid back to Figures Toy Company or WWE.
Right.
So there are people who have tried to email WWE legal in regards to outstanding licensed belt orders. and they have said, we have nothing to do with this. We're just a licensing party. It's handled through X, Y, and Z. So for those who don't know, WWE at the time was only charging a 25% license fee. So when you purchased a Winged Eagle or a WWFIC, the rough estimate of the license fee was like $825.
Okay.
Midwest bumped it up to an even $1,000. JMR bumped it up to an even $2,000.
Oh.
Okay.
But
the money's like
2,000.
if you really want to solve this problem, you need WWE legal involved.
Right.
And how do you get WWE legal involved? This goes back to like, why doesn't WWE crack down on bootlegs? Well, they need to notice that the money was taken out of their pocket.
Right.
So if you can provide a case of where you have 50, 75, 100 people who purchase licensed belts where WWE has not paid their money, then maybe they start opening their eyes and maybe they start realizing, okay, maybe it's worth our time to start investigating what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, but at the end of the day, it's all about money.
Right. This whole thing's about money.
Taking down my Instagram account.
But Dan, I want to know this. Towards the end of Reggie's life, do you think that Rico might have taken orders for Reggie and not told him about them?
In 2018, I kind of asked Dave that. Dave said, and I still have the text message, Reggie doesn't remember what he had for breakfast yesterday.
Right.
Dave was putting it out that Reggie started having memory issues. And at the time, I knew Reggie had heart issues.
Hold on, we lost him. Remember, heart issues.
Yep. And I saw Rico for maybe about 5 seconds. He's like just trying to act.
We lost you at heart issues.
Reggie had heart issues. And the last time I saw him was at the Cauliflower Alley convention in 2017, maybe 2016. And I saw Rico and I wanted to talk to him like, hey, what's up with it? He acted like so busy and I saw him for maybe 5 seconds. And Reggie had ammonia, so he couldn't come, even though he lived like 20 minutes away or whatever. But I can't say anything right now because I'm thinking about it and just like how sad it is that like everything that's happening in this community can go back to them. Like people want to complain about there's not replicas of the classic NWA or world class belts. The real handmade belts, the secondhand prices are ridiculous. Like you have to resort to bootleg. Like this is all a direct, cause and effect based on their business practices. Like they were offered numerous license deals to make replicas of their NWA belts, and you can make passive income just based on the licensing and the royalty. And I remember I was at the gimmick table when the NWA tags came out from Premiere, and Ed Schumann looked at it and he goes, I don't like this. I go, why? And he goes, this looks too close to the real thing. This is gonna cost us some orders.
Right.
And I think at that point, that's the reason why they didn't go ahead with the NWA US and NWA TV replicas, because they valued the amount of real belt orders from the community than they did making money without doing anything from licensing deals.
And I'm going to jump on that, Dan. I posted a video out earlier, and I mentioned to Vinny recently on NWA Power. For months now, they've been using one of Ron's made NWA TV titles. That's been switched out now. It looks like it's a set of plates for the NWA TV title that have been done by Fandu. It wouldn't surprise me now, considering what they did with the NWA World title, and Fandu Belts came out with their own replica of it, if they start releasing the NWA TV title as a replica. I was saying to him, that's a prime opportunity for them to essentially make money off of the licensing from the design, but not actually have to then produce any more belts because they'll be having an income from that.
Right. I watched your video today, and the question I thought is how they modified the side plates. The original NWA TV had the NBC, the ABC, and the CBS logo. All right. People years ago were like, well, how can they sell authentic copies of that? That's copyright infringement based on that of the logos, and like kind of went like under the rug. Nobody really raised a big deal about it. But if you have a company like Fandu and NWA selling mass-produced copies with those television logos on it, then you start having a case for real copyright infringement. So like you said in your video, it looks like they modified the logos to something similar, but that is not infringing. So
right.
If they're only paying the royalties to Dave because, Reggie's passed, even though technically it's backtrack again.
Reggie's work.
Reggie didn't design the majority of his belts. Ted Miller and Reggie worked in unison. They had the clip art books. They had Art Explosion books. They would take and clip, and they would glue and cut out and layer and photocopy. And that's how they made the majority of the most popular belt designs in the last 50 years. So what you can say is technically, even though, let's say you're right in your assumption that Fandu made the new NWA TV belt and that NWA is doing replicas, is Dave getting the royalties on that? Is Ted Miller getting the royalties on that?
I would have to imagine it was going to Dave.
You would imagine it's going to Dave, but if you cut out Dave, does Dave have the money and resources to get a legal team and go against Billy Corgan?
Not very much. Well, if he hasn't got the money to replace plates that were messed up, then I'd have to say no.
We have a super chat from Mr. King J. Sean. Thank you, King J. Sean. He says, just supporting the show. Great talk tonight, Belt Brothers. Side note, Dave's Crumb Rind and Winged Eagle possibly for sale if anyone is interested. And we also have...
DM me. I'm interested.
All right. DM Mr. Dan McMahon at Belt Fan Dan. We also have Justin. $2. Dave is more famous. Dave is a more famous version of Scammed Eddie. I would not argue that.
Have we ever gotten a health update on Eddie? Last I heard, he had the cold.
Yeah, last time, I mean, with Mr. Eddie Williams, we at first heard he was pretty much dead. And then all of a sudden he survived. And now he's being quiet. He's hidden. He's probably found another scam opportunity, maybe some NFTs or some type of currency coin, cryptocurrency coin. Who knows? Pokemon cards. Who knows what he's doing now? But as long as that motherfucker stays out of here.
Bam coin.
But yo, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Dan, thank you for being here and giving us your knowledge. And guys, do not fold your belts. Do not fold your wrestling belts. You can follow Dan at BeltFanDan on Twitter and Instagram, and Mr. Hazard F5 on YouTube, on the tube. 20,000 subscribers. Mike Patullo is selling wigs. If anyone needs a wig, that's available. Stephen Rim says, great show. Nico says, great show. Appreciate it, guys. And like I said, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we are on social media at Pounding the Meat.
Get some sleep.
Shane, get some sleep.
I'm wide awake now, so I'm going to be up for a couple of hours.
It is what, 2:30 a.m. for you? 2:30?
2:30, yeah.
Put on some WWE Network since you still have that, and watch some. Well, actually, you know what? Put on some TNA. You'll fall asleep real quick. Put that.
I was going to say I'll put on some Raw. That'll do it.
Oh man, I had fun tonight, guys. Thank you so much for joining us and for engaging with the show. We appreciate it. We'll see you next Thursday at 8 p.m. sharp. PoundingTheMeat.com and on YouTube at Pounding the Meat. Take care, guys. Peace out.
Yeah.